Well, so let's officially welcome anyone that is watching with us, as well as our attendees that have joined us today. We thank you very much for attending this particular session, where Charles and I just thought to do something a little bit different from our typical resume cover letter presentation, which we have quite a few of those saved. We'll talk about resumes and cover letters all the time. If you have questions about resumes or cover letters, you're welcome to ask. But we have decided to focus this particular session, a little bit more on design. So one of the questions that we get a lot is, I don't know how to do that, or I like the way that looks and I don't know how to recreate that, or they do recreate it, but they choose what we call the long way around. And then there have just been some questions about different design resumes and do's and don'ts and shoulds and should nots. So we wanted to address some of those design things today. So that's what the purpose of today is. But again, just as a reminder, if you have a generic resume question, you can still feel free to ask. We can still answer those questions. But as you have some around resume design, especially if we don't get to that particular design question of yours, just see what we can do and we'll address it live like this. Anything you want to add, Charles?
No, I will be looking at the chat simultaneously, and if no one else shows up, this could be a nice little intimate two-on-two, so we can actually direct
Absolutely.
some of the more specific questions for you. So please feel free to ask those questions within the chat or unmute yourself at a point, and we'll be more than happy to kind of answer some of those questions that we'll be doing. And similar to what Nadira just said, we're going to talk about some of the design aspects within your resume, some major do's and some don'ts, just to assist you moving forward.
Yeah. And as a quick introduction, which we didn't bother to do, Charles, we just assume the whole world knows who we are. We're famous. No, I'm Nadira Pippin. I am the Career Center Director. I have been doing career development for more years than I would care to actually say. But one of the things that I have taken under my wing with career development is resume design, because at one point in time in my career, I was designing resumes for my clients, but now I take on the role of the teacher. So I get to teach people how to design their own resumes. Keep some money in your pocket. You don't have to pay someone to design your resume. They're not that hard. Now you can make it hard. You can go and try to design one that is like on Canva, Canvas, whichever one that is. You can design a really nice resume and take a lot of time. And I think that could be great if it's for you. But then the regular just design of a resume, please don't pay anyone to do that. At least not at this point or stage in your career process. And this is something you can definitely do really, really easily. So that's where I come from when it comes to resume design. I really want to make this as simple as possible by really showing you the tools that you can use. And your introduction, Charles.
Yes, good early evening. I would say good afternoon because the sun is out. But I'm Charles Zuna, career development counselor. My liaison area is the College of Arts and Sciences. So EVS, bio, chemistry, communication studies, film studies. But similar to what Nadir said, what we want to do with this is just help you moving forward. After you become an alum, you still have access to us for free because you're an alum. So, but at this stage, we definitely want to help you and kind of gear you and help you with maybe some design questions, because there are different platforms you can use. You can use Canva, you can use InDesign. So what we would like to do is give you different options and help you when you're creating. Because one of the things that you'll see and you run into when you Google is there's so many different types of resumes and so many templates. And while we're going to tell you, like, yeah, there are many amazing resumes, but then there are some where we're like, that's probably not what you want to do depending on where you are, especially in your field. So that's just one thing we take a look at is, are you an arts person or are you a financial advisor? Is that what you're going into? Those resumes are going to look foundationally different. So we want to talk about how to be able to spruce up either one in different industries.
That's right. And I didn't mention it. I'm actually the liaison currently to Cameron School of Business, work very closely with Teresa Walker and Sarah Kessler. So I represent a little bit more of that traditional style of a resume, because in business, that is what is much more acceptable for that industry. There are some exceptions to that rule. Marketing could potentially be one of those exceptions, but things like finance, accounting, you're going to find a lot more of the traditional areas, the traditional styles in those areas. And as Charles mentioned, if you have arts, potentially film, potentially graphic design, if you're getting to some of those areas, you're representing a little bit more of the non-traditional styles that could be acceptable. As we start talking about this, since Charles mentioned the template, I want to throw it out there for those here today, as well as for those looking at this after the fact. We don't always condone the template simply because templates are not designed for an individual. They're designed for the design purpose. So if you're going to use a template, just think about a couple of things as you approach your template use. I will stand here and say no templates. I have said it, no templates. We're going to teach you how to design or do some things on your document that can help you with design. But just as sure as I'm standing here telling you no template, someone's going to use a template, or maybe you've already used a template. We're not going to template bash, but templates aren't always designed for a graduating college student. So if you have a template that you can edit and you can actually bring some of the elements that you need as a college student and or recent graduate, that's great. Those are the better templates, the ones that you can save for later on, the ones you don't have to pay for, and that you can save later on and you can make edits. An example of this, we'll tell a college student or a recent graduate that education should be to the top of their resume. But then a template may have it at the bottom, because if the person has been working in their field for 10 years, maybe they're not relying on their education, they may be relying more on their experience. Both are right, but one is going to work better for you. If you try to take that template and move your education and all of a sudden it skews your information everywhere because you've deviated from their design, that's not a good template. That's one that's only going to cause you frustration later on. So we want to make sure you are using a document to the best of your needs, not to the best of the template design. Plus, the template may include categories that you don't need. So if it's something you don't need and you're trying to force feed information into that category, it's going to be very, very transparent. So a template is not there for you to just fill in information. It's a guide, and you can delete and add on as needed. But again, I would rather that you did not think about the template, because a resume is not a difficult thing to design, just something you might want to put a little bit of time into and you can have a great one. So with that being said, I think I've covered no paying, no templates if possible, but no paying for it if you're going to use one, and making sure whichever one you use, you can download and edit. Horror Story had someone that was using a template. They brought in their computer and showed me their template. And I was like, yeah, okay. When we got to the end of the template and they were trying to download it, it wouldn't let them. And they put all of that energy, all of that time, a couple of days worth of work and energy into designing a resume, just to find out that before they could download it, they had to pay. And they were upset. I was upset for them because they put a lot of time and energy into that. So we tried to figure out a way to copy and paste that onto a blank Word document and move forward. So that's why we say no templates. So if you want to, Charles, we can go straight into the resume that I have pulled up for
Yeah.
everyone to see. I think they're probably wondering why we have it pulled up.
Let's just get right to it. I agree.
Right.
So one of the things just to start is your contact information. It can seem very simple, but you'd be surprised how many people can throw extra pieces in and kind of just mess this up. One of the things you'll always see is that your name is always going to be prominent and it's going to be on top. I always specify that your name should be the largest piece on your resume. It should pop. That doesn't mean it has to be like 28 font. Like some folks make it really huge. It doesn't need to be that way. If your font is 12 throughout, and let's say your subheadings are 13, well, then I'm going to make sure that my name is somewhere between, let's say, 14 to 20. And as you can see in this example, Lucy Wade, fake person, obviously, but her name is at a Times New Roman 20. It pops, it's bolded, your eyes go there, you know who she is. The following information: her address, her email, her phone number, and a LinkedIn URL. If you have a URL, the LinkedIn URL, please use it. Now, one of the questions we get is, do I have to put my full address? Nowadays, especially with the pandemic, no. What you can do, and it doesn't hurt if you want to put your city, state, that's fine, because what that does help with a company is if you do remote, they know what time zone you're in. There are folks who work with a company based in Central Time Zone, and even some that are maybe West Coast. So that's something a company may want to think about. 1 hour is easy to decide on, but if you're with a company and you're going to be remote and they're in California, well, then that means that 8 a.m. for them is 11 for you. So you're going to have to, are you going to start that at that time frame? You're like, no, because that means you have to work even later, because 5 p.m. for them is 8 p.m. for you. You're not trying to work that difference. So city, state, definitely push in. Your email address, your phone number, LinkedIn. Now, one of the things you don't want to do and you want to be careful. I don't want to say don't, but be careful is with the whole icons, like the email icon, the phone little icon. You'll see that. And especially if it's really big, it can be distracting. Now, I'm not totally against it, but sometimes people get really creative and it just takes away from the information. This is probably the easiest and simplest part of your resume. Just make it quick, make it easy. Just let me know if I like what I see already. I can find where Lucy's email phone number is. Chances are they're going to email you first before they call you, but at least there's both there. And if you have a LinkedIn URL, great. This is a simple but straightforward, clean style that you can use. Now, another option is if you want to put your name on the left bank and put your information in a text box, that's also possible too. Sometimes you will see that. And you can create a bit of, you can create a table and put your information there, and you can control what you put in, and then you can get rid of the actual table information. And as you've seen that they're doing, she's right aligning it. It's going to be real simple. You don't have to worry about hitting tab. You don't have to worry about, making all these granular changes, and then simply getting rid of the borders, and then there you go. Now she has it highlighted that way just so we can, see the difference there. And you can make subtle changes, but guess what? It still hasn't made a large change in the style of your resume. No major spacing breaks. So both of these formats are really simple and they're both clean. And you can go with any manner you want there. And that way you can see Lucy Wade. If you wanted to make the name slightly larger to equal your contact, you could. If you want to keep it that way, that's totally fine as well. So I'd probably go a little smaller. Yeah, that pops, nothing crazy. So something simple as that. The name is prominent, got her contact, and now I'm going straight into her professional information and education. And if you see that large gap is there, if Nadir wants, she just shortens it up, boom. We're still at a good placement based on what we started. So you have two different options, just sleek, simple, and clean.
And let me add on to that. I was demonstrating that as he went along, just to give you a visual of what he meant. Some people will use text boxes. I actually use the table format because it's easier to control. For me, with text boxes, one of the things that irritates me with them is trying to line them up perfectly. My eyes are not what they used to be, so I don't try to stare it down and make sure that everything is aligned. When I have the table format, that will do that for me. It will show in this shaded form after I took the lines off, just to let you know this is a table. Different versions of Word may or may not, you may or may not see that, but I will go back and show you exactly what I did to get it to this format for anyone that wants to recreate it. Again, the original way, name on top, contact information underneath, slick, easy, very simple. You do not have to do anything more than that. But then there are some that are like, I want some flair. I want something different. I don't want mine to look like everyone else's. So this is one way, because this is not as common, because you have to know how to do that pretty effectively. One of the things, the first thing that I did was create the table. So when I went to insert and table, I chose a 2x2. I'm not going to do it again because, as you see, it was starting to put something else in there, but a 2x2 table. Another thing that I like about the table format is that it automatically takes it from margin to margin. So I didn't mention this with the design, but before you start doing things on your paper, I think it's really good to try to decide what margins you want. We tell people between a 1/2 inch and 1 inch margins are fine. If you have a lot of information you're trying to convey, 1/2 inch margins. Go ahead and take it down a 1/2 inch so you can maneuver within that. But maybe you are a freshman or a sophomore, you don't feel like you have as much information, we'll use the 1 inch margins to start with, staying somewhere in between that. I love a 0.75 margin, going in between 0.5 and 1 inch. Really good place to start as well. But make sure your margins are clean and even all around, because this will take it from one margin to the other margin. So that's one easy thing to note. And then, as you saw, I just kind of moved the information into the text box that I wanted it into, and then took out extra lines as needed. In this particular case, where I have something going to another line, there are two options here. Of course, I could just take the LinkedIn URL, because it will be much longer than that, and move it to its own line. That's perfectly simple and easy to do as well. Or if you still wanted everything to fit on one line, maybe consider taking out the E and the P. I will see this a lot with formatting. Charles and I talked about it. Maybe you want to add a slash in between the two. But an email is an email. I don't need an icon and I don't need the word email. I don't even need the letter E to tell me that that's an email, because an email is an email.
Yeah.
A phone is a phone. Now, if someone is giving more than one email or more than one phone, well, first thing I would question is why, because you really only want to give them one contact information. What's the easiest way to, in the simplest way to contact you? If you're going to be using your student email, that's perfectly fine, especially if you're applying for something like an internship. But if you're about to graduate and you think you want to use an outside email, just try to stay away from any really fancy uh, email handles. So, but that, taking that E and that P off, I could possibly have fit at least these words LinkedIn URL on that one line, but odds are probably not. Another option, let's say if I wanted to keep it to one line once more, because Lucy Wade's name doesn't take up the entire area of that box. Maybe I just come here and I drag that box over. So now as you see, the LinkedIn URL picked up on one line. So that name takes up this entire box for right now, and I have a little bit more leeway of how I want that table to be designed. And when you print this, even when you save it as a PDF, these little dashes do not appear. The only time they will see those lines is when you put borders on them, and you do not need the borders. While he's talking about the name also, so again, maybe someone wants a little bit of flair. So what could they bring to the header? And I know Charles is going to talk a little bit about color and things about that, things of that nature. But I also want to talk about how you design the name. Your header does not have to be the exact same font as everything else in your document. We talk a lot about consistency when you're designing a resume. But when I think of consistency, I think of, what do your headers look like? Do all headers look the same? Are all headers the same font size? That kind of the information underneath the headers, is that formatted the same? The dates and things of that nature, are they consistent throughout? But your header, the where your name, your actual name and address header, could look slightly different from everything else, because you're trying to make that pop. You're trying to bring attention to that. I call it ownership. He said, make your name stand out. I say, make it stand out because you own your document. If your name is the smallest thing up there, it almost seems like you don't really want them to know who you are. So that's a good reason for it to pop. So what could you do with that? You could obviously change the font size. So I still don't recommend using difficult to read fonts, but if your name is in something that is still easy to read, I don't like any of those, but that's a personal choice. I know I personally don't like any of those, but I'll go with my good old Kandara. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it, but that's how I pronounce it. A little bit different of a font size. Okay. So maybe now we want to change it to something slightly different in the style of the font. Break out the actual font box. This is where you're going to find a lot more of your options here. One of my favorites is the small caps, which takes all the lowercase letters and turn them into smaller versions of uppercase letters. So it's just, again, a little bit different of a flair for that particular name. Then I would also say, like, again, all caps is the traditional all caps. If you want to, it just takes whatever you put and makes it all caps. But again, small caps, smaller versions of the uppercase. Coming into the advanced font feature, this is something else that, again, not everybody is going to learn about just automatically, but you can change the spacing in between your actual characters. So you see here, the character spacing here says normal. If I go to expand it, you see what took it out a little bit. It expanded it by this 1 point. And you can increase that if you want to. And you see pretty much what it's doing as I'm expanding. I'm not saying that that's something that someone loves, but now you see that their name is taking up a little bit more of that box. So if they don't want it, this name is pretty short, they want it to kind of expand out and take up a little more space. But maybe you have a really long name and you want to take up a little bit less space. Highlight, pop out the font box, and instead of expanding, condense it. So this will take away some of that spacing in between the letters. Teaching you this because this is a tool where you can bring, again, some design flair as you play through these areas of the font feature to your header, your main header. So just wanted to teach you that.
All right. So following that, so the two next sections that we're going to talk about and see, one is optional. The second one is definite necessary. And that is what you see, the professional summary / summary qualifications and education. Now, depending on where you are, some folks completely nix the summary qualifications and they go straight into their education, and some people provide it. So that's why I say it's a yes and no for some. The education is always going to be yes. So two things you're noticing here is that one, within a color scheme, well, I have to touch on it, is that if you look, every heading has a color that is the same. They went with a neutral blue. So I'm just going to talk about color slightly, but still stay in the vein of these two top sections. When you're selecting a color, one thing that I always stress is, one, you don't know what the employer's screen looks like, what update they have, are they gonna print it? Do not pick a bright fuchsia-like color. You may love it. I like bright colors, but that doesn't mean it translates the same on my screen, nor will it translate the same if they print it. So if you're going to pick a color, yes, that is not gonna work. That is really hard. I have to squint. I'm like, what the? Don't make it easy on the person looking at it. They'll love you for picking a color. Now I get it. We're UNCW folk. So it's like, I want teal. Yeah, I hear you. But then I'm going to go with the closest darker hue of teal I can so it doesn't hurt the reader, because this color doesn't hurt your eyes. And if I print it out, it's not going to take up a lot of different colored font, because one thing that happens, let's say I don't have a color printer. So when I print this, that education is just going to change in a slightly gray hue. But if it's a bright color and I print it on a black and white, it will almost not be existent because of the light hue. So if you're going to select a color, go with a darker color of any hue you're thinking. But go with neutral stuff, navy blue, a dark green. If you want to go with a burgundy, a dark burgundy, that's totally fine. But stay away from your pink, stay away from your high fuchsia, stay away from your sky blues. Just be careful, because we don't know the type of resolution or the printer that person may have if they want to print it out and take a look at it. So there are different colors, but this one is kind of a nice standard strong blue. It pops, but it's not going anywhere. Dark purple. Yeah, it's dark. Yes, I'm cool with the dark purple. Yes. If you went like,
as long as it's a deep dark purple.
Yes. If it's
I
really
was just
bright,
trying to show you guys too, by the way, where I was at was showing you how to select more colors. A lot of times people will stick with these theme colors, and that's why they have just that one color that they saw there. And these are just, you see my colors that I use, the standard colors, excuse me, that are up there. But the more colors will pop out the additional color spectrum. You can customize that if you're really into that. You can go up and down the spectrum to get to the deepest, darkest purple that you see. I think that's fine. I'll do that at times when I'm looking for a good royal blue. But I also know that you can use some colors on the outer edge of this spectrum a little bit more, because they tend to be the darker ones. So a dark purple, a deeper purple, as you see here, is comparing the old to the new. I'm like, okay, that looks a little bit darker than the other one. And lo and behold, it is perfectly fine.
Yeah, and I would accept that dark purple. And I know if I print it, it's going to be slightly off than my Lucy Wade in black, but all the rest will be in the same vein, and that's going to be totally fine. So yes, dark purple. Now looking at that subsection, when you see summary qualifications or professional summary, the key word is summary. I can't tell you how many times we see a summary that's 5 lines or 4 lines deep. That is way too much. That is not a summary. You want it to be shorter than that, because what your summary should be is something universal that may be not even linked to your degree. So for example, you see excellent command of the Spanish language, including oral and written comprehension skills. I used to use that consistently. Why? Because I'm a bilingual speaker. My degree is not in Spanish. I just happen to grow up in a Latin household. My degrees are in communication and higher ed administration. But how helpful is that at an institution if I say, hey, I have an amazing, perfect command of the Spanish language. So if I have to talk with students or parents or even present, I can do so in both English and Spanish, zero problem. That is a short summary. I can make it a 1 or a 2 liner, but I'm not going to go in depth on my degree, because that's what my experience and my relevant courses are for me. I haven't even got there. So when you do your summary and you're like, well, maybe you're like, I don't speak another language. That's fine. What is a possible universal skill set that you can talk about there? A short blurb that you can mention. And I hear people, well, what is that? Maybe you have a great command of using physical tangibles with your hands, so to speak. My sister's a baker. She loves working with her hands. So in her summary, she made that part of her summary, worked on it. She was like, yeah, great. Let's use that. And she put it in, efficient use working from scratch with hands with various tools, both large and small, in and outside of the kitchen. Great. That just tells me, as an employer, great, that she consistently loves working with her hands. Not all bakers are the same. Not all chefs are the same. Not every person in your degree, whatever your degrees are going to be the same. So just having that extra niche is going to be different. All right. Some people are more recipe based, and I'm just going baking because that's the one I mentioned. But maybe you're more of a writer than an editor. That may be something you can pick. If you're an accountant, yeah, maybe you're like, yeah, I'm a guru on Excel. I'm more about investments than I am about portfolio. Knowing what your small niche is, it's nice to just put that small blurb there, making sure it's not 4 lines like looking for. First of all, do not say you're looking for a job on your summary. We know you are. That's the whole point of you submitting a resume. I can't tell you how many times, looking for a job where I can use my skills. Yes, obviously. Don't waste that space saying that. Give me something that you know is going to kind of make you stand out a bit. Throw me something different. Give me something that I don't know or that's kind of universal in that place, because we know you're already applying for a grad assistantship, a job, whatever it may be. So don't put looking for a job or hoping to apply my skill set. Don't be generic. A lot of people are doing that. Give them something different that's going to pop, but at the same time, it could be a universal skill set. Example, critical thinker who's reliable, responsible, organized, and always goes the extra mile for the job. Short, sweet, and now what I'm thinking about as I look forward to reading, I wonder if the experiences that she's going to share talk about her being organized, responsible, or going the extra mile, because that's already like, all right. And just that phrasing, always goes the extra mile for the job. I'm like, okay. Because when I read her cover letter, I'm like, I hope I read something about going the extra mile. Just something of that nature makes you, boom, it pops out. But what I really stress, don't make it very long, all right? It's a summary. Make it very brief so that the next part, which is education, is going to be extremely important. Now, if you don't want to use it, that is totally your discretion. Did you want to add anything to there?
Oh, definitely add, because when we're talking about different industry perspectives of the summary, a short abbreviated summary will work well in some industries. If you have more to summarize, that will get longer. So I'll address this to be more of very highly involved, highly active in their career. Even my graduate level students that might watch this, you might have a bit more to summarize. So if you have more than 2 lines, it is okay. But I think if you're looking at the core of what Charles is saying, is making sure that if you choose a summary, choose something that's relevant and useful. So how are they going to use this information? If you can't automatically think of how they're going to use it, it might not be worth mentioning, at least not at this stage. Give yourself some more time to develop that. Make sure, again, relevant and useful. Also make sure that everything that you mention up there is something that you can back up below. That same will go for your skill set. So I don't want to focus too much on content, but just knowing that the skill set, any skills listed, this particular sample is a chemistry student, which we're missing the degree up here. Just notice that, but they're a chemistry student because I see the relevant courses. And they have a lot of these skills, skill set and techniques that are relevant to that particular field. Well, what are the skill sets that you have that are relevant to your particular field? And if you want to highlight some of that, and like maybe you don't necessarily feel like you have something like being bilingual, or maybe you don't feel like you go to extra mile for the job. Like for me, when I see that as someone who's hired people, like what is the extra mile? Are you trying to say that you are overworker? Because that could also be a concern if that particular company is like, we have a lot of people that overwork themselves and burn out too quickly and therefore they leave. It's okay, you go to extra mile, I think that's good, but like he said, how are you going to explain that later on? How do you explain what the extra mile is? So always know how you're going to expand upon that. Particularly everything on your resume is something that you need to be able to talk to and expand upon. So again, knowing your industry, knowing your skill set and knowing what the people in your industry are looking for, it should be tailored to a specific job that you're applying to. So knowing what they're looking for, how does all of this mesh and match? That is your professional summary. If we move into kind of going back to the color as well, so going back a little bit back to the design, um, Charles and I were talking, well, Charles mainly was talking about the color, sticking to a dark color. That might be something that you want to bring into pop in your header as well. So rather than having the color throughout the document as every single header down below, what if you decide to use that same dark purple or really dark navy blue or some kind of, again, darker color as a backdrop for your header? You would probably have to change your font to white instead of black, because if you're going to use something that dark, black is going to fade into the background. But that's another way that you can potentially make your header pop, is use the pop of color up there at the top, and then let the rest of your document be in black, white, or grayscale. So rather than trying to use color throughout the entire document, use it at the top for the pop, eliminate color from down below. So now it's not really a worry, because the only thing that would be in color would be the name. And I will see if I can try to demonstrate that for you. Ooh, I changed the font. Let's undo that. Let's go into the filler feature here. And the last color I used is still there. And for some reason, it has changed these to text boxes. This is a design feature. So let's take that out. Why did it make these text boxes? This is a document. This is something, it's good for you to see this though, because I will try to, when Charles is explaining something, I'm probably try to figure that part out. When someone brings their document to us and they're asking for help with that, one of the first things that we have to do is figure out how they got it to where it was. So like, how did you format it? Because we can tell you all these wonderful things and then we try to demonstrate it and it doesn't work. And it's like, okay, that should work. So there's something in the formatting that I don't know what was done, and therefore I don't know exactly how to undo it. So this little, I call it the little paragraph button, it's the show hide button, will often tell us exactly how this person formatted something, especially in the sense of hitting return, hitting tab, hitting space bar. So you may see us do this quite often when we're reviewing your document. And that's what we're trying to figure out. How did you format it so that how we could potentially go in and help you to tweak that particular formatting. So that'll come back up in just a second.
So while Nadira, you're seeing that, playing with that, how you can change your styles, what I'll briefly talk about, and you'll see your next section, your education. And there's so many things that happen with education. People go, what? They start putting their education, and they start putting their courses there, and they put honors graduate, and I'm like, okay, let's not throw everything in your education section. Your education should be very simple. What should you have? The name of your institution. Okay, for those of you, your UNCW, what I see all the time, I see University of North Carolina, Wilmington, comma, Wilmington, North Carolina. The name of the school is included with the placement. So you don't have to put that, because obviously Wilmington, North Carolina is the name of the school. No need. Now, if you went to the College of William and Mary, then yeah, put the city state. But the city state is already in the school name. Well, what I would say, as you see, follow it with an abbreviation, because you may have done involvement at UNCW with several orgs that you may list. So instead of retyping University of North Carolina, Wilmington like 6 times, you can simply put the abbreviation. And since you did it the first time up top, I already see, all right, there's the connection, UNCW. Now, what you have seen across, you'll see expected May 2021. You don't need to put an exact date, nor do you need to put the word graduation, because that's what any employer is expecting to see. All right, you went to school. When did you get your degree? That's what we're thinking about. We don't even need to waste time with the word graduating. May 2021. All right, so that means if I got this before May, then that means, and it's coming up next month, I'm expecting to see it then. Then what you see underneath, one thing that's missing, and I did that on purpose, is, well, all right, what's Lucy's major? She graduates in May. She's got 3.6 in May Dean's List. I love that. But what's this girl's degree? And some folks forget to put that, or they minimize it. So now, what should you do? Do not put BA and do not put BS. Take the time to spell it out. It does not take that much space. Bachelor of Science, Chemistry, There it is. As opposed to BS chemistry. That's just slightly lazy, but look at all the beautiful space that's left. It's not taking up that much space. So simply put that there. Now, what I get questions on is, do I bold everything? No, you don't want to go bold heavy. Okay? A lot of people are graduating from UNCW, yourselves included. What's going to stand out is, well, what's your degree? I graduated with 1,000 other students, but not all 1,000 were communications majors or higher ed majors. So I bolded my degree so it's prominent. And then if you have a great GPA, put it underneath. If you made Dean's List, put it underneath. Now, with the caveat with that, a lot of folks list their Dean's List. Fall 19, spring 21. Don't do that. We don't need the full listing. That's a nice GPA. Anything above a 3.3 or 3.4 is going to tell me you made Dean's List. So just simply put Dean's List. You don't need to put all the extras. Now, if you have an even stronger Dean's List and you make magna or summa cum laude, definitely list it there. But if you haven't, but you have slightly similar, you can do what Lucy Wade did. Now, along with the GPA, what I see sometimes is GPA 3.6789. You don't need all of those numbers. The first two, even when you talk and you speak, hey, what's your GPA? So you be like, oh, I'm at a 2.9, I'm at 3.6, I'm at 3.4. That's what any employer expects to see because that's how they speak. You don't need, oh, what's your GPA? 3.674. But no. I don't.
Now, if you're applying for a graduate program, though,
so
a little bit different. Academics work different. They'll accept
correct.
it, but you still don't need anything more than that because they're going to get a copy of your transcript and they'll see your full weighted GPA.
Yes. Some folks put 3, and I think that's totally fine because you want to maybe you have a 3.69, so you want to stress that I'm right there near the 7, fine. And I'm okay with that because I've used 3 numbers myself. But 4 is not necessary. That you're just going to overkill.
And be careful how you round that up. It's only rounded up after the decimal point, not before. So the 3.6 could be rounded up to a 4.0. That does not work. So a 3 point, but the 3 numbered digit for the GPA is definitely acceptable. And also know that when you're spelling out the full name of your degree, you are bringing some air of achievement. Like this is a Bachelor of Science. This is a Bachelor of Arts degree. So writing it fully out gives it its just due. It's not a BS degree. It is actually a Bachelor of Science. That's another way to think about it. Again, ownership. This is what you have earned. One thing that I see on this particular one, the relevant courses and classes is separate, which is perfectly fine, especially if you have the space on your resume to expand, keeping that in its own section. It is an active section, so only the courses that are relevant to what you're applying for, not every class that you ever took, but also know that this could also be a subset of the education. So maybe you're a little pressed for space. You have more you want to include and you don't want a full section that lists all of those. You can summarize that underneath your education by just typing out relevant courses, a colon, and listing them side by side. So that could be a space saver or a space maker. It really just depends on how much space you are looking to take up on your document. Oftentimes when someone is coming to me and they have a more than 1-page resume, I look at things like this and my brain automatically says, you have more than enough space. Let's figure out how we can condense some of these things that actually aren't going to be deal breakers, because again, they will see a copy of your transcript. So that's not a deal breaker that you even have this section, but if you're putting it up there so you can use it, I understand, we can condense that and make it smaller. That's another design choice. Want to be mindful of time and still looking at the chat box in case you have questions. We have about just over 15 minutes left. So if you are thinking of questions, please ask. But just again, to be mindful of time, I'm going to move into something that I love to show students because to me, it's a deal breaker when you are trying to figure out a document. Let me actually get this back to its normal. So one of the things that I do, again, I told you I go to the show hide and I will see what someone has done, because if you look down here under the experience, which one is it? Oh, I've already fixed it. I fixed it so I could demonstrate it and now it's there. So if you look here under the Jabber Lab Assistant, you'll see this person hit tab, 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 then space, 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 space. And you don't have to raise your hands in here, but I can tell you we've all been guilty of doing that. The goal that most people have when they do that is to line this up perfectly on that right edge, to kind of have it at the right margin. So if I hit 1 or 2 more spaces here, it takes that present down to the next line. So what they end up doing is they backspace out until they see that present comes back up. This is not bad, okay? I want to make sure that I clear up that this is not a bad thing to do. It's very typical, very common, but there's an easier way. If you are designing your resume, so anyone watching this that has never designed one, you can set what I'm about to do up front by going to your shortcut tabs feature and setting a right tab. I'm going to demonstrate how to do it in just a moment. But maybe your resume is already designed. This is usually where knowing what to do comes into play. If your resume is already designed and you want to have a really easy right tab, that's what I've set here. The difference between the right tab and the space dot tab is that here, again, if I hit space, it takes something to the next line because it's adding another space. Here, if I add space, it does not. It takes away a space from that tab. So this stays formatted as a right tab. That is so important because a lot of times if I tell someone to increase or decrease their font size or work on the line spacing or these kind of tips for formatting, one of the first things it does is it skews their dates. And that's frustrating because now they have to go back and fix all of their dates. So this will be something I would tell people to go back and do to make it your lives easier. First thing that you do is going to be to delete all of the spaces in between. So I took away every tab, every space. So the cursor is in between where I want to tab. Next thing is to note, I have my ruler visible. If anyone does not know where that is, I click on view and the ruler is right there. If you click ruler, it'll put it up there, both side and top and side. Now, one thing that Charles and I did not really talk about was what version of Word you might be using. And after I demonstrate this, Charles, I know there's something you wanted to talk about. I'll swing it back to you. But the different versions may have it in different locations, but it's always there. So I want you to know that. Like I'm showing you via regular Microsoft Word, but if you are using Google Docs, it's there in a different location. So going back to the home screen, you see the rulers there. Right here in the corner is actually your shortcut to setting tabs. It always defaults to the left tab. Left tab basically means what you've done here. You've hit tab a certain number of times and it just kind of spaces over. If you click that twice, it goes to what I just call it the backwards L. I don't know anything else to call it. That now you are setting a right tab. If you hover, it tells you you are setting a right tab. Now, anywhere in the white space that's on your ruler, you can actually click up there and you will see that L appear. Once it's on the ruler, you can drag it anywhere you want. So maybe you want it exactly on the margin. That's perfectly fine. Now here, my cursor is still between what I want to tab. Now when I hit tab, you see the one arrow. I want to have this feature up here so you can see the difference in the two. And again, now, if you wanted to type anything else, maybe this now has an end date. So now instead of August 2019 to present, it ends in April 2021. And you see I was able to adjust that without it adjusting it to another line. This feature to me is really important because it will save you a lot of time and a lot of frustration. It's one of the reasons why people go and they get a template is because they don't know how to do that. And it's actually really simple to set that right tab. So now you can do that with every date that's up there. You never have to worry about it adjusting to another line. So I wanted to show you guys how to do that.
No, I think you covered that perfectly fine there. So with concept of time, I do want to touch base on your relevant courses and techniques and show you two other forms. Another form that's kind of popular that you will see as far as headers. So I'm okay with we promote if you want to use your courses, and Nadira showed you how to make it a lot neater with your margins, but you don't need to list every single course. So I say you can go 6 to 9 if you do this style. It won't take up that much space. As you see, this student had a lot of courses that they combined. One thing that could be changed is I already see a slight mix-up. She put both physics 1 and 2 and organic chemistry 1 and 2 in that same section. I could simply take organic chemistry 1 and 2 or physics 1 and 2 and place it underneath general biology 1 and 2. And there I have that same, but actually it's up to you, the person, if what you want to use and drag, just so you have a nice little even 2, 2, and 2, and it's there. Her technical skill sets. Now, one thing, You want to go with your more extreme, or I'd say skill sets that are a little more complex. I'm not putting any intro courses, and I'm not putting skill set Microsoft Office. My grandmother knows how to use Microsoft Office. However, there may be some other software or some other hardware that you're using that others don't. Are you proficient in Adobe and multiple platforms? Are you Excel certified? That's different. Are you using Python? Are you using ArcGIS? Are you using some specific lab techniques I've seen here? That you definitely want to highlight. And there's no going into full detail. She's just naming them. So if I'm an employer and I'm looking for a researcher in chem, and I see, oh wait, she actually has centrifugation, and she also has aseptic techniques that are something that I'm looking for, great. I'm gonna more than likely respond to her and set up something so we could talk about it, just so I know that she has that. So when you're like, I probably don't do much, incorrect. You do a whole lot. You just have to list it. And sometimes listing the simplest to the more complex skills and courses, you'll see the harder ones that you'll list that you accomplished and you know about. And that's what you want to do. Don't lie and put something that you only did once. And you're like, well, I did it. I'm like, but are you proficient in it? No, then don't do that. I use Excel, but I'm not a guru. So you better believe I'm not doing that. But if I got certified in PowerPoint and Word, yeah, I'll put that certification in. But I have Adobe software. I have, hardware skills at the same time. I use certain equipment. So if that's what you have, you definitely want to put that in there when you're designing your resume. Something simple, and as you can see, doesn't take up that much space. And she put 4 in each. You could probably remove one whole row and go 3, 3, and 3, and it saves you a line for potential adding more information in another area.
So then adding on to that, think of this the same way of the summary. It's a summary of your skill set of what you bring to the table. It should be directly relevant. So, and that's what he's saying. It should not repeat what you have in your professional summary or your summary of qualifications. They should feed off of one another. But anything that I see down here should be something I can definitely use. There was a little bit more leeway that he had up in the professional summary of expanding on skills that might not be directly relevant, but could be useful. But down here, we're talking about skills that are direct match. In this case, really easy when you see someone in chemistry and you see a lot of equipment and techniques that are here. But when you're, let's say, um, social work. Now you may be talking a little bit about theories and techniques that you may be using in social work practice. If you're a nurse, maybe you're talking about those skills that you're the most competent at as a new graduate nurse. So this will obviously shift with every single thing, but it does not take away from the fact that if they're telling me this, I need to know where it came from. Is that from their labs? Okay, maybe that's somewhere down below. This person has an assistant chemist position, so it may be from somewhere down below. To be able to explain that is what's most important. I wanted to go back and point out another design thing, because when Charles was mentioning moving organic chemistry 1 and 2 down below, what I noticed when I was in this show hide feature before was all of the spacing. So this person, if I were to move the organic chemistry 1 and 2 down to the same line as cellular. You see how it already skewed it. This is what ends up making people really frustrated with their resume. They're like, no, I got to go back in and space again. No, you do not. You do not have to do all of that. The easiest way to get this to look the way you want is actually going to be to go back and insert another table. So this person had 3 columns and 2 rows. Go into the insert table design, give you 3 columns, 2 rows. Now you're just going to move what you need up to that table really simply. Trying to highlight just what I need, which is what's taking me so much time. So move what you need into each area of the table that you want it to be. And cellular biology, and then organic chemistry, 1 and 2. All right, then we're going to delete all of these spaces that just weren't necessary, right? Delete them all. Now, just as we did with the header, go back in, take the lines out. So no borders mean that they won't see any lines. But what you do have is a very easy and very polished look. If you look at this table to the one that's under techniques and skills, you will see, okay, maybe I need to move that below as well. And the answer is yes. Yes, you do. So, and that again, the previous design, the middle column was actually centered. So let's go back and center it again if that's what they want. But honestly, it's probably not what they want because as you see, it puts it kind of too close to the other one. Perfectly fine. Just make them so they're not centered anymore. Really neat. And this, some people have also wanted to put bullets beside their skills courses. You can, it's a design choice once again, but this makes it much easier to add a bullet as well. So you just, when you add the bullets here, you see, you take off all of those lines to make it clean for you. You see the bullets are there. The information is lined up perfectly, and you don't have to do all of that space, 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 space. So that's something I would probably advise that particular student that came to see me to do with their technique and their skill set. Couple of things. Let's kind of hit some last tips, Charles. Again, we're not going too deep in content. We would definitely welcome. I haven't seen any questions pop through yet. If someone had content questions, like with experience, we just wanted to show some formatting things. I want to throw out a couple of more things. One about photos. So this is a trend that we have seen recently with photos popping back up on the resume. They are not recommended. There are so many reasons why they're not recommended outside of a couple of industries where a photo could be acceptable, but it's still challenging because they're supposed to be deciding to hire you based upon your skill set, not based upon how you look. So when you put a photo in the mix, you're actually making that's a really confusing thing for HR offices because they have to prove that that had no bearing in their hiring process. Again, there are a couple of industries that might be slightly acceptable, but
Nadir,
not in the vast majority.
if you do a quick screen share while you keep talking, I can show you. I can
One
show them what you're talking about while you continue.
There you go. So yeah, that just know that with the photos, we recommend if you're going to have a professional photo, put it on your LinkedIn profile so that if you have it on your LinkedIn profile, when they click on that, they will see your professional LinkedIn page where your photo is something that's acceptable on your professional LinkedIn page. But on your resume, it is not a document. I mean, not a item that needs to be there.
So,
I don't know if you wanted to talk about what you had pulled up before I go into the others.
oh no, that's fine. Yeah, because you're seeing the resume, correct? Because I'm doing dual
Yes.
screen. Okay. So yeah, just that. And what we have is a different version of what a two-column resume could look like. So on our planning guide, you may see this, and this is more acceptable because there is no image behind it. Now, what will preface this with is usually for folks in the arts area. If you're in graphic design or coming up, you just want to be careful, okay? You can do a two-column, but exactly like Nadir said, do not use an image because people are human and you don't want it to be biased and go against you.
Exactly. And even with the sample that he has pulled up, there are a lot of wonderful things about that sample, as well as the other one that he had pulled up.
Oh.
But if they took the photo off, I would think it that much better. It's like the photo is just not necessary. You're going to get different opinions on this. I know that you will, because a lot of people these in this social media day and age think adding the photo to something adds depth to their document. But the truth is, it's an HR nightmare. So let's try to keep the HR nightmare out so that they don't have to prove so and so such and such about a particular applicant. That no, we did not hire them because they were a woman and we're looking for a man. You know, so again, we're taking all of those subjective pieces out of play. Another one of the last things that I wanted to mention is make use of your formatting features, your font size. I showed you how to expand out your font tools, all caps, small caps, italicize, bold, but be careful with that. So please don't think that you have to go in and make everything bold or everything italicized. Think about the placement of something. What do you want to draw the eye to? When someone is listing in a job title versus an employer name, do you want to highlight that your job title because it has some bearing, or do you want to highlight the employer name and keep it consistent? That's a big part of why we're giving you these tips right now, is to make sure you keep those things consistent. There are probably lots of others we could talk about. One with the column format, we didn't really talk about that, Charles, just kind of mentioning this. The column format is not something that's going to be for everybody. Whether you do the really professional looking one or more introductory one that you see here, just be mindful that formatting it differently is not what's going to make you stand out. What's going to make you stand out is the content. Do you have what I am looking for as an employer? So even if someone has a format like this one, or like the one that even had the photo that was really nice in design, what it's going to boil down to, I look at this person's and it's kind of sparse. like, okay, it looks good, but are they really getting across everything that they need to qualify themselves because they've tried to fit it all in this format? A lot of extra spacing. Questions here. I just don't know if it's going to be good or not. But a lot of times people will use this format to kind of make up for the not having a lot of experience. It's very transparent. What we can do is help you bring out that particular experience. So going to our career planning guide, you will see quite a few sample resumes, very easy to design in Microsoft Word, even in Google Docs, although we don't recommend it. We will tell you very quickly, download a version of Word so that you can actually get some good edits in your documents. Google Docs might not be a bad place to start, but when you're really trying to dig deep and make yourself stand out with these little tweaks to your document, you're going to need a good editor like Microsoft Word. And if you're really good at using some of those other things like Canva, okay, great. But just make sure, again, you're sticking to that consistency. Make sure it's something you save as a PDF document so that whatever you design is something that will translate on that next person's computer. So we wanted you to know those pieces.
So we want to thank you for coming up. Hopefully, all the information you got was helpful. This will be recorded, so if you want to come on back, we recorded this Zoom, so it will be available on our website if you missed something or you want to re-see something that we presented and we spoke about tonight. So thank you for joining us.
I just popped up here right quick, Charles, so that they will see how they can get in touch with us.
Okay.
That's the only reason why. Very quickly, you will see we do hold Express Monday through Friday, and as well as Wednesday and Thursday mornings, but Monday through Friday from 2 to 4. You can access our Express off of our website. So maybe you have some additional design questions or content questions that you didn't get to ask. Please feel free to visit us. We will help you out with that. It gives you our location and our office hours as well. So if you just go to our website, you'll have that information. If you want to schedule an appointment, you can go to Handshake and schedule your appointment, or you can call our office and they'll get you set up within scheduling your appointment within Handshake as well. That was it. Thank you so much for joining us. And you guys have a wonderful day. You're very welcome.